Hi guys, I'm here with another one of my little informal chats, and I've been talking to this guy off the record, shall we say, for some time now, and he's a really interesting guy. He loves Q Sports and he loves helping people with their mind, and I'm really pleased to introduce to you Matt Andrews, sports psychologist. Let's see how he wants to describe himself. Hi Matt, how you doing, mate?
Hi, Mark. Nice talking to you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So how would you actually describe yourself, Matt? Are you a sports psychologist? Are you a therapist? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, more. I'd say more of a therapist, really. I've worked with sports psychologists in the past, but wouldn't class myself as one of those really. My background is sort of more on kind of the therapy side of sort of helping. Well, originally started years ago in child development, as in youth work and working in that environment, um, and sort of picking up a lot of skills with working with young people. I went into the police sort of after that for about 14 years. I worked with those. So that was obviously more the criminal justice side and dealing with behavior that kind of criminals and things bring up. I then changed into working with homelessness, mental health issues. That kind of went into doctors, surgeries, hospitals, that sort of stuff. Kind of running clinics, sort of around changing behaviour and um, kind of sort of providing different therapies to kind of service users in there. Then sort of during that time, it goes back a long time now as well. I'm getting old, but I kind of always had an interest in sport. So very quickly, I kind of realised that a lot of the kind of techniques, therapies that I was kind of learning, which was I think a healthy mixture of like sports science, psychology, the therapy side, counselling. I kind of saw very quickly that that would kind of transfer across to sport quite easily. And I saw how powerful that way of working was with kind of really people in quite serious kind of situations. And, whether, you kind of had people that were street homeless, had no accommodation, had no funds, had ongoing health issues, had mental health issues. Um, and it kind of took longer to turn those people's situations around, but I saw how powerful that way of working sort of was, and the tools that I was trained and qualified into using, how quickly that turned around. Sometimes you'd have to kind of wait, like work with someone for 1, 2, 3, I think the longest was like 5 years to kind of see that end result of them being in accommodation, improving their health issues, moving away from their addictions, into full-time sort of work and employment, relationships back, with families, that sort of stuff that had been damaged before. Um, so, but I kind of felt that those techniques would work very quickly for other people that weren't in those sort of more serious, chaotic situations as such. So I started working with people in sport, sort of kind of on the side as a bit of an interest, and because I've kind of got a buzz out helping people as well. Basically, that's kind of what I enjoyed, um, and I kind of proved myself right. Sort of, after 1, 2, 3 hours of talking to someone, there was quite dramatic sort of changes and improvements in behaviour changes, especially around temperament, that sort of stuff. So um, it kind of grew from there really, and then kind of the sport kind of started taking over a lot, because of the cuts and the way that things have changed with regard to charities and those sort of organisations. I was ended up sort of being asked to work in a way that I wasn't really keen on. It was when I very first started, it was right, you've got all day to work with this person in a chaotic situation, no rush, do what you need to do with them, and you'd end up with some really good, dramatic results. But as things have changed over the years, that started changing to right, you've got 5 minutes to work with a person. We want you to work with a larger group of people sort of each day. And, we kind of want you to record everything that you're doing, which then meant that the time that you actually spent with someone greatly reduced. And that kind of went against really kind of my ethos of working with people. I didn't feel like I was doing what I was even trained to do really and qualified to do. And as a human to another human, it didn't feel like I was giving them the service that I should have been doing. So I kind of really decided to kind of work more for myself, providing sort of private appointments for people, especially in sport, amateur and professional levels. But I also like to still give something back as well to kind of those everyday people that are experiencing everyday problems. So we've run a mental health stream sort of once a week now for like 2.5 years, where we speak about mental health issues, behavior change, improving people's situations. And where I can as well, I kind of still go and work with people privately, and give time back to people that are kind of just struggling with family issues, ordinary kind of working issues, life, whatever kind of gets thrown up for people, really. But yeah, it's the sport that's really kind of taken over, sort of, especially over the last. I've been doing it really for about 20 years now, working in sport. But for over the last 5-6 years, that's kind of been my main kind of area that I've worked in.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you started in that kind of area. You know, people with family issues, people with probably addiction and homelessness, and I mean, you know, they're real problems. It kind of makes sports people who already have, you know, a pretty good way of life, let's say, you know, they've got an interest, they've got somewhere to live, they've got family, they've got support around them. And then, you know, here we are needing more help because something puts us off while we're playing, or we don't know how to think when we're at the table, or, you know, on the field, or whatever the sport might be. It must be, without, I'm not belittling what you do with sports people by any means, I'm not belittling that, but it must be so much easier to work with sports people rather than people with those, you know, huge life issues. I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with suicidal people. Have you done that before in the past?
Yeah, it's quite a common. Unfortunately, especially sort of since lockdown and things like that, that's still kind of pretty much a weekly thing that I'll kind of come into contact or deal with. You know, if not kind of 2-3 times a week. And it is really sort of, you know, especially with the police work as well, the whole kind of, you know, method of working in those kind of areas was always to remain at a calm level, a stable level. You know, be consistent in the way that you kind of react to things and how you behave yourself. You know, you've got those kind of professional boundaries and, you know, policies and ways of working. I'm sure we've all kind of met people in those areas that might not always stick to those. You know, the police are in the news a lot at the moment, that sort of stuff. But I was very kind of old school with that sort of thing. It was, you know, I will deal with you as a human, and I'll talk to you as a human. And I might not agree with the way that you're behaving and things and what you may have done and bits like that. But I know that the best way of kind of solving this problem is to remain calm, you know, react well to kind of how you talk to me and how you communicate to me and stuff. So, you know, that was a big way that I worked. And I think a lot of feedback that I get from people that work within sports is, doesn't matter what I come to you with, you always, you know, I think that I quite often have people phone up for the first time and say, oh, you've never dealt with anyone like me before. And I think, okay, like, test me, here's another test. And they'll say something, and they'll say it in a way that they're kind of obviously expecting to surprise you with it. And then, you know, in the kind of back of my mind, I think, well, that's nothing really. You know, that's okay. That's simple to work with, which is nice. And I think that's what I found during that time of where I was doing a mixture of the two. I was going into work and in the morning dealing with someone that was suicidal, perhaps someone that was just, you know, due to have a leg amputated through kind of addiction, things like that. They were homeless. They were living on the streets. Had all sorts of things going on for themselves. And then in the afternoon, you know, or later on, you know, I'd have an appointment with a sports person that would say, oh, you know, everything's going wrong for me, you know, and you'd say, okay, well, what's wrong? And it's, well, you know, I've fallen out with sort of my parents at the minute. You know, I'm not talking to my parents. And And it was, for them, it's a really serious situation. It's making them feel the way that they do. It's making them feel that they can't perform or play within snooker or pool or whatever they're looking at competing in. So for them, it's still a big issue that you had to kind of solve and put a solution to. But compared to the other things that I'd experienced, yeah, for me, it felt quite minor and easy to kind of resolve. And that's what I liked, because working with someone that was perhaps street homeless with those addictions and everything else sort of going on, which may take 4 or 5 years to kind of get them to kind of the goals that we'd expect, as in the addictions have gone, they're in housing, they've got a job, they're contributing to society in the way that a lot of us would kind of hope and expect. 4 or 5 years and things where you can work with a sports person, and within an hour you've got those kind of results for them quite quickly and fairly immediately. So it was confirmation in a lot of ways for me is how powerful that way of working sort of was, and it was nice to see that instant kind of reaction and the change. Whereas in the other side of work, you normally have to wait sort of a lot longer, even if it was like 6 months, a year, something like that. So it is very much similar to like Steve Peters' background, who's well known for chimp paradox and things like that. So I very much kind of relate to the work that he kind of done. I'm not a doctor as what he is, but I've worked in the same areas, dealt with the same situations, problems, and worked in the same sort of type of clinics.
Yeah, just mentioned Steve Peters there, and I can't let that one go without mentioning one, because everyone knows Steve Peters because of one particular sports person. And is he in a picture behind you there or not? My eyes aren't that good.
Yeah, Ronnie.
Yeah,
that side of me.
yeah, Ronnie O'Sullivan. So normally when you're speaking with somebody, they must say, "Well, come on, who have you worked with? Who have you helped? Why should I go with you?" kind of thing. But you have worked with Ronnie in the past, right?
Yeah, I've it's always difficult for me, because I come from a different background to what like sports coaches and other people in, especially in snooker and pool and places like that, sort of come from. A lot of those times you're talking to people that have either been involved in that sport as a player and a competitor themselves, that have then grown into like coaching and perhaps picked up a little bit around kind of the mental side sort of during that time, and grown an interest in that. They normally are quite more open about who they're kind of working for, so they're kind of a little bit more outspoken, and quite quickly sometimes sort of declare who they're with, who they're spending time with. And you'll see them kind of at tournaments and things a lot more as well. With myself, that's kind of I'm always kind of happy with it, because that's my background and that's what I've got programmed in me, really, is how important confidentiality is, being professional, those sort of things. So it kind of goes against my grain, really, to kind of go, oh, on Facebook, social media, I'm working with this person, I'm working with that person. So I know that if I was able to kind of say exactly, like, people would be really surprised, I think, of over the years of who I have worked with, what sort of environments I've been in, especially across all sports. Really, it's a vast mixture of sports. So
tell us about some of the other sports that you've worked. What other sportsmen have you worked with? I mean, obviously not just Q Sports, but what else have you done?
Yeah, kind of. I've been so lucky, and again, I'll probably talk about Steve Peters a little bit again in a minute, but like what Steve Peters has said, really, he's kind of mentioned himself. I've always had an interest in a vast mixture of sports. Some of my family members are sport orientated and he's involved in sport as well. Steve Peters has always sort of said, I don't need to know how a sport works, how a person needs to perform in their sport. I need to know how that person feels and how they think. And it's that we kind of work on to then bring out their best performance. So every person in a sport will have a process, and a routine that they have to kind of stick to the best of their ability, to perform the best they can in their sport on a technical side. So when you speak to someone, really, you're then dealing with them as a person. So it's very humanistic. And the therapies that we kind of use are as well. So you're solving anything that they've kind of got on their mind that might be acting as a distraction, and pulling them away from that process that they kind of need to stick to perform to the best that they can. So bearing that in mind, and that I've got a big interest in sports anyway, it's literally kind of covered tennis, golf, boxing. There's equestrian show jumping, netball, basketball, motor racing, a huge mixture. Even, to be honest, there's even people that are into like competition fishing. That was a little bit more of a surprise to myself. But
Yeah.
when you kind of speak to when I've spoken to a couple of people within that, it's, well, I'm so negative when I'm sat on the riverbank. I just, everyone else is looking really comfortable, really happy. I cast me kind of line into, the lake, and I sit there straight away thinking, it's not going to be my day today, and the longer the time goes on where I don't get a bite. And so, and that actually surprised me.
Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. The reason people go fishing, surely, was because because it's such a relaxing thing where you can just get away from everything and let the mind go blank and just enjoy the situation. And to hear, I've just picked up on something there. The fact that it is now a competition maybe brings those negative thoughts into even fisherwomen as well. Sorry, obviously women fish as well. So that's really interesting. So it just goes to show that even something where you think there would never be any stress like that, all of a sudden you've got, they've got their line in the water, and you probably think they're thinking all serene thoughts, and the stream's running nicely past, and everything's beautiful. The sky's blue, the sun is out, and got no worries in the world. And all of a sudden you're thinking negative. How much in the brain is sport? How much in the brain is it? How much in the mind? What?
Yeah, there's a lot of percentages that kind of get thrown about, that once you get to a certain level, it then becomes like 90%, 80-90% of like how you think and what you think. But you can kind of read lots of different things where that percentages and the levels, change so much. To the other extreme, quite often when I sit down, and I'm approached a lot of times by people who kind of say, I don't know what else to try. I don't believe in what you do, but I've heard that you help people out, and if you can't help me, then that's it. I'm giving up, and that's the end. I'm retiring and all sorts. And when I first start speaking to them, I kind of go, look, I believe it's a lot more, but if you get an extra 1 or 2% from thinking better, more clearly, more positively, having tools in place that if you have a setback and a disappointment, you can just go straight to, and a structure that what to follow to get you back and reset yourself, as quickly as possible. Even if that gives you an extra 1 or 2%, and that helps you get to that winning line a lot easier, or across that line before your opponent. That to me is huge in itself. And then the more, very quickly, with those sort of people that have kind of come to you in that way, I haven't had one yet that hasn't kind of contacted me after an hour, 2 hour kind of session that we've had, and have gone, do you know what, I feel so much better, and the motivation's back. I just want to go out and play now, or I just want to go out and compete. But that is a kind of a first step as well. You do have to practice what we talk about, pretty much just as much as what you do on a technical side. You have to kind of keep that structure sort of there, and keep using those tools. And the better that you kind of do after a while, the easier it is to actually forget about them and move away from them. So then that's when it's even more important that when you have a setback that you used to perhaps get all the time a little while ago, or you felt that you got all the time a little while ago, it's then important to kind of remember that you've got those tools and that routine, that structure that then you can fall back onto, because the better someone does, the less that likely they are to use the stuff that we put in place to begin with, because when you normally speak to someone at the beginning, they're normally kind of struggling quite a lot then, or they're finding, you know, competing quite hard, difficult. They might not be getting the results that they kind of expect, but then they get used to kind of achieving more, performing better. And then that's the time where you have to kind of keep reminding them, really, don't forget to use this. If anything does pop up, you know, you've got your plan, you've got your structure, you know, you've got this as part of your process. Don't forget to kind of use it. So it kind of changes as you go along, really. But yeah, even if it's 1 or 2% added to what you're capable of doing now, you know, what does that mean for you? Does it mean that you kind of win more matches? You know, does it mean that you win more racks or frames and things, you know, that then gets you closer to winning more matches, winning tournaments, picking up that trophy, winning the prize money? It's a little bit like what you said about fishing. Is the difference is all of a sudden you've got rewards. You know, you've got rewards of like a trophy, recognition. Your name in the paper, or you know, fishing articles, and you know, in sport, whether it's ranking points, you know, you've got something all of a sudden that you can kind of win or lose, and that's what makes a lot of difference to people competing. Is that, you know, all of a sudden something's got a value rather than just going out and relaxing and enjoying it.
Is there like one particular kind of problem that keeps popping up with a lot of the sports people that you work with?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot in Q sports where it pretty much follows all the way through sports, really, but it's that inner voice that pops up that kind of goes, "Are you good enough?" and asks those horrible questions that we don't like. In fishing, as we mentioned, like they've got that time on the bank where they're sat there and, you know, they're watching. They've got a certain amount of time to fish, and, you know, they're sat there and they've had a period of time where they haven't caught anything, and it's, you know, so they've got a longer period of where those doubts can kind of start swirling around as well. You know, I'm seeing other people or hearing other people around me sort of, you know, it seems like they've had a good start and a good afternoon, and bits, you know, I'm still sat here, you know, I haven't caught much at the minute or what I'd like to have achieved. Then in something like boxing, where you've got someone in front of you that's really fast paced, really quick, you know, that's kind of throwing punches and things at you, you've still got that inner voice that can kind of pop up, that kind of goes, well, you know, am I good enough? Am I going to get beat? Am I winning? Am I losing? You know, what happens if I lose? So a lot of it is controlling that sort of doubt. You know, in pool and cue sports, it's when you're on that, you know, that frame or rack winning sort of ball, or that important shot, where you're down on that shot, that voice pops up and goes, "Oh, you can't miss this, because then that's game over," or "You can't miss this because you're going to let the other person in and they're going to clear up." And so that's quite a common thing. Look, quiet.
Yeah, I lost you just for a second there, but I think it might be the internet where I am at the moment. I'm in Thailand at the moment. I don't know whether you knew that or not, but yeah, I'm in Thailand, so it can be a little bit choppy here and there. Yeah, sorry. So carry on. We'll edit that bit out, hopefully.
Yes. What was the question? What was it talking about? So, and some of the other things can be that feeling of being stuck, really. As in, I've been competing for quite some time now. I haven't reached the goals that I thought I would have done. I don't really know kind of what's going on. I work really hard. I practice really hard, but in kind of matches, I just can't take across like what I do in practice to matches. And I don't feel like I'm good enough. You know, I haven't got anywhere, and it's that basic feeling of being stuck. Whereas humans, none of us like that feeling in a way, really. You know, of just being stuck and not kind of moving backwards or forwards, and just seeing that not much is really changing, or having a feeling that not much is changing. So that's one of the other areas and questions that comes up a lot. It might be framed in different ways, where people will kind of describe how they're feeling in different ways, but then it will come down really to that feeling of being stuck and not progressing how they'd like to.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about two sports you mentioned there. I'm going to go back to the fishing very quickly. I mean, that's it. The more I think about it, it's a really tough sport, because you can't see your opponent. You've got nothing really that, you know, it's not like oh, I've got a shot here, or I'm going to go for a treble 20 on the dartboard or anything. It's just such an unknown quantity. And then you've got the other side of things, like the boxing that you mentioned as well, where you've got somebody right in your face actually trying to destroy the thing that we're talking about. You know, your mind and the confidence that you have. I mean, being smashed in the face constantly must be a really tough thing to try and deal with. And yeah, the more I think about it, I've just recently, I don't know whether you've seen them, there's some great documentaries that Netflix are doing at the moment. They've done one about golf, Full Swing. There was one Break Point about tennis, and there was also one about Formula One as well with Michael Schumacher and that. And you know, when you look at these top stars, the stuff that they go through and their dedication to not just, you know, to the actual sport, but to their lifestyle, the diet that they have to live with, the exercise, the Michael Jordan. There was another one about him.
That was brilliant, that one.
I mean, that was
I really enjoyed that.
What was it called again? I forget what it was called.
Last Dance.
The Last Dance. That's it.
Yeah, no, it's
good. And you know, I kind of put off watching that for a long while because I really dislike basketball. I just think it's somebody running up that end and putting the ball in the basket, someone going that end, and you play for, I don't know, it lasts for about 2 hours, and the scores, there's just one basket in it or something. So just toss a coin or something. But no, I've grown to admire, especially Michael Jordan. I mean, geez, how much did that guy put in? I mean, he did more than anyone else. And I've always had in my mind, well, I've got so much talent, you know, I don't need to practice hard. You know, I can just turn up and play, and my natural talent is going to see me through. And to see somebody with, I mean, some of the baskets that he would get, you know, just unbelievable things that I've never, because I never watched basketball, but now I've got nothing but admiration for all those guys. And you know, the dedication, and I know Michael Jordan worked. I've actually read the book called Relentless.
Oh,
Have you heard?
I think
it's
seen it. I haven't read it actually.
Tim Groves, I think it is.
I think so, isn't it? Yeah.
He worked with.
I've seen it. I haven't read it.
Yeah, he worked with Michael Jordan and many other famous sports stars as well. And actually, I haven't read the book. I've listened to the audio bit because I'm too lazy to read. I fall asleep.
That's all right. That is good.
I fall asleep when I read. But having said that, I've just started listening to another one. Well, I've listened to it about 5 or 6 times now. I actually go to sleep listening to The Inner Game of Tennis.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, because there's an inner game of golf as well, and they're 2 really good books. There's a lot of good kind of suggestions. But if you think about when that was written as well, I think that's quite an old book.
74, I think it was written.
Yeah, and that kind of showed me really. Everyone knows how important, you know, we hear about it all the time, how much people sort of regard the mental side and the psychological side of sport as being so important. And it goes back all those years within tennis and books being written like that sort of in tennis, but still so many people are quite reluctant to kind of look at that side, to actually work on it. There's a lot of people that sort of think that they've kind of looked at it and worked on that side, but kind of when I speak to them, I realise that they actually haven't, or they're not.
Do you think there's a little bit of a stigma maybe attached to, you know, going and seeking help, especially from us males, you know, who think we're strong and we're indestructible and we don't need that kind of thing. You know, we're all right. We're men. We just go out there and perform. But just recently, it seems to really be coming to the fore, and more people going out and searching for this kind of help. We just mentioned a couple of books there. Have you got any plans on bringing out a book? I mean, tell us a little bit of how people can actually, you know, because the hardest thing maybe for a sports person is to make that initial approach to somebody like yourself. So what would you say to those people?
It is, and I think unfortunately we have had a little bit of a brief discussion about this sort of a little while ago, but unfortunately as well, because it's become a really popular sort of area to look at, there's lots of different people that have kind of popped up in different areas for different reasons that are kind of saying that they can kind of supply a certain service and things. So the first part of that is it is in all sports books have a little bit somewhere, you know, even the old snooker books, the old pool books, that sort of stuff. They'll always have a section around the mental side of the game, and they'll have some sort of suggestions. No matter how small, they'll kind of mention it, and there'll be some suggestions on there on thinking and what to do. Most people that kind of perform in sports and compete in sports will kind of be conscious that the mental side is important. They'll kind of be aware of their own feelings. You know, why do I get shaky at this moment? Why do these thoughts start popping up when, you know, I'm on an important shot? You know, if something goes wrong, why do I sit there kind of worrying about that rather than resetting and being able to kind of, you know, clear that from my mind? So it's all about those things. So if you're kind of experiencing that, you're aware that those things are there, and everybody has them. You know, no one in sport, you know, Ronnie, I keep pointing the wrong side, but Ronnie, you know, Ronnie has exactly the same. They kind of all have that inner voice, you know, those moments of where those little bits of self-doubt kind of pop up. There has been a stigma, I think, within sports, within certain sports. I think if you kind of say that you kind of feel nervous when you're kind of playing, when you have those sort of doubts where you kind of lose that self-belief or those sort of moments, you know, to kind of a worry of your opponent kind of knowing that that's what's going on for you can be a great fear for some people. I always think as well on the other side, you know, we talk about the psychological side of sport. A lot of people are kind of worried and fear the wording. You know, what does that actually mean? Have I got a weakness there? Then we talk about mental kind of side of sport because it gets broken down to the basics of that side. And people think, well, you know, there's something mentally wrong with me. You know, it's nothing like that at all. We all kind of react to those emotions and situations, you know, in our own ways. You can kind of take someone that's practiced, you know, say snooker, you know, for years and years, put hours of practice in, you know, and they'll absolutely feel comfortable and fine in their environment. If you put them in a plane and tell them to jump out with a parachute on the back, they're going to probably experience something completely different. So, you know, in different environments, we will have those change of kind of thoughts, feelings, and we'll have that psychological side of that. So, yeah, I think there has been some stigma around, you know, because it's associated to the mental side. Does that mean that I'm ill in some way? Does that mean that I've got a health issue sort of going on? Does that mean that I'm weak? And it's not at all. Working on the mental health side is a strength and should be seen as that. There's the side is
sorry to interrupt you. I've just had a little message in my ear where we've got to go for a little commercial break, but this is fascinating stuff, Matt. And we're going to be back with part 2 very, very soon. Matt Andrews, it's been a pleasure, and we're going to speak more very, very soon. Welcome back. A little word from our sponsors there. Back with Matt Andrews here. Mentor, I think, is a good way to describe you, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's something I was going to change it a while because I work with a lot of people in different countries. So mentoring means lots of different things in different places, really. So in the UK, I think there was a lot of people that had that kind of, oh, it's like a wishy-washy, kind of person who just kind of helps you, perhaps in business, that sort of thing. But I was working early on with a lot of people sort of based in America, where sort of mentoring and having a mentor, was quite a popular thing. Because I cover so many different areas, and because of insurance and things, I had to kind of give them a title to kind of explain what I was kind of doing. I feel like I'm really lucky because I use lots of different elements from different areas that I really like and that I feel really work. So there's bits from sports psychology, bits from sports science, bits from all those kind of different therapies and counselling. And I've kind of pick a mix really. I've picked all the good stuff from all of them and then kind of put them together. And it is very much in sort of what kind of Steve Peters has kind of looked at, what he's sort of worked in. There's a lot of new research kind of coming out to show that medical kind of way of working with people in sports is a really powerful thing to do. And that it's one of the best kind of structures to kind of provide to people to work with. So I think, as we were just talking about who to kind of work with and how to kind of approach people around sort of the psychological side, I think as time kind of goes on over the next few years, I think that will become sort of more and more really where people recognize that working with people from that sort of background and those experiences is the way to kind of go, where you're kind of working with the person as a human rather than just a way that they're going to perform and when they kind of go out there to compete. The good thing I like about it is it's the worst thing I kind of thought was if I write 20 things down for like Mark to kind of go and do when he goes and plays, that's just adding more stuff for you to think about really, when really I felt that the best way of working is to kind of try to clear your mind as much as possible, to give you a basic kind of structure to follow when you kind of needed it in kind of moments of where you kind of have that voice that pops up and asks those questions, so that you can kind of perform at your very best to the highest of your level, while feeling as relaxed and as positive as you can. That's kind of the overall thing that I'm sort of looking at when I'm working with someone. Exposure is really important as well, because the more you're exposed to kind of playing on a TV table with knowing that people are watching you and stuff like that, there's those valuable moments where instead of kind of setting those higher goals of, right, we want to win this match by this many, and we want you to kind of play at this technical sort of level, to start off with it, the very small goals could even just be, right, we want you just to kind of go out there and feel comfortable, to kind of go and enjoy it, to enjoy the moment and to stay in the moment while you're playing, rather than kind of looking too far ahead or looking back at setbacks, that sort of stuff. So we'll kind of set smaller goals, knowing that the exposure and being exposed to those environments in the most positive way possible is where you'll kind of learn the most from. So it's about approaching different situations in the best way that kind of suits you. The overall goals we kind of know are there. We can kind of, we know what they are. We know what we're kind of aiming for. So I always talk about drawing a line under those and then looking at the smaller steps of how we can then go into an environment to then achieve those bigger ones. And that's pretty much what a lot of the kind of work's about, and putting a structure in place that is reliable, that you can depend on as a competitor to fall back on when you need it.
Yeah, that's interesting because just before I called you earlier on, I was just going through my Facebook feed and a little graphic popped up, a little cartoon type thing
okay.
came up on my timeline of two ladders, and one had huge gaps between the rungs and the other one had very, very small ones, and one person was almost at the top of the ladder with the small rungs, and the guy on the big steps was still reaching for the first step. So it kind of reminded me of what you just said about small steps.
It's in those environments, things can seem very overwhelming. You've got a lot on your mind in a way, and there might be a lot of perceived pressures and stress from being in, that competitive sort of environment. So, if you're kind of just focused on those big sort of end goals, it then distracts you as well from the smaller steps that you need to take to kind of get there. And I always see it as as a pathway, or a destination that we want to travel to. I don't know, you kind of might have a big dream of kind of traveling to New York and bits, but if you just concentrate on what you're going to do when you get to New York and what it's going to feel like, um, you're missing out all the process that you need to do to get there, as in save, what luggage do you need, book your flights, is there anything else I need for traveling? What am I going to do when I get there? Where am I going to stay? So, it's the comparisons are there really of any destination that you're trying to get to. If you just concentrate on that end goal, then it is going to take your thoughts and your focus away from what you actually need to do right from the beginning to kind of get to that place. So I use a lot of conversations about sat navs and destinations and pathways and things while talking to people. It's something that comes up a lot, and the whole thing that we're trying to achieve really is building a pathway. There's I give everyone I work with sort of a folder with worksheets in, because I find that visual kind of aids are really helpful to people rather than just talking to them and listening, giving them advice that way. They've actually got something physical that they can pick up, they can work through. If they need a reminder before a tournament or before they compete, it's easy to take around with them. We use mobile phones a lot now as well, so they've got little messages on their phones that just like little hints and tips and reminders. But all of that works towards building a kind of a structure, a timeline, and a pathway that works for that individual. So everyone's will look fairly different from each other, but it will literally cover everything. It will be what they like to kind of eat before they perform, their sleeping pattern, how they like that to be. Are they drinking enough, exercising enough? Do they like to kind of have full blast kind of practice where they're kind of, every day is taken up with hours and hours of practice, or do they like to calm things down a little bit and have a 2-day kind of just break so they sort of reserve a little bit more energy? Everyone's a little bit different. So, but the end goal is that someone will open up their folder, they'll have that timeline on there. They can add things as they kind of find something else, more helpful. So it might be that sort of something in their diet, they might not be exactly happy with that. So they'll decide, well, actually, that's become unhelpful now, or it doesn't really give me anything anyway. So I'll change that diet and I'll tweak it a little bit to where I'm perhaps eating more kind of slow burning foods, of where the energy is kind of longer lasting. So we'll take some of the kind of sugary things that we're still eating out, and we'll put some of the longer lasting sort of slow burning foods sort of in there instead. So it'll be tweaked as they kind of go along, but it should be a pathway and a platform really, which then kind of they recognize certain areas and points of that. So our brains and our bodies, once they start kind of putting that sleeping pattern into progress, once the practice kind of fits in with how they like, your brain is kind of then thinking, oh, actually, we're getting ready to compete now and we're getting ready to perform. And you'll kind of recognize where you are on there and have that structure to kind of follow. So you literally get to a position where you treat everybody the same, and every tournament and every match is exactly the same, no matter who you're playing and what environment you are. That's kind of the goal that we're aiming for.
Yeah, that kind of answered the next question I was going to ask.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's good. It saves me asking a question, but yeah, let's talk about Q Sports for a second, because there is a pre-shot routine that all players will go through, and I was going to ask you about a pre-tournament routine, but you've kind of just
Right.
touched on that. But another question I wanted to ask you was, so I'm a potential client of yours, so I'm thinking, right, I've admitted to myself, I know I've been in these situations. I could have made that 9-ball or 10-ball to win the tournament, and I choked on it right at the last minute. This stupid thought come into my head. I know I've got the talent, but I've just something missing, and I know in my case it's mental, and I know because having listened to certain sports psychologist. We mentioned the Inner Game of Tennis and Relentless Tim Groves. Is there, is there some kind of, is it an ongoing situation with you, or if I come to you, is there a set program for a certain amount of time? Is there, obviously cost comes into this as well. I mean, we all need to make a living. I mean, I love doing stuff to help people. You've touched on that before about all the work you've done in the past. A lot of it voluntary, obviously. But so I've now decided, right, I want to take my game to the next level. I need Matt Andrews. So what do I do? What are my next steps, and what can I expect? And maybe if you can, I don't know whether you can or not, talk about cost as well.
Yeah. Because of working with lots of different people, me personally, I never wanted to I always wanted to be fair. Always, that's kind of a big priority of mine. Because of my background as well and where I'm from, I can laugh about this a little bit, really, because I've had some people say, oh, it's not, you don't make a very good business person. And that's not my background. My background is around humans and helping people, and that's where I get my excitement and my buzz and my interest from. Obviously, we all have to pay bills and stuff and things as well, but a lot of people can kind of put an importance on cost. Some people will have different views on kind of contracts and having contracts with people. And there's lots of different debates around that, where some people, as in coaches, they'll kind of say, right, you need a contract with me because, that's me kind of showing that I believe that you can achieve what you should be achieving. And they'll kind of put it away, across that way, as in, why would I charge you sort of an hourly rate? And that the only reason because of that is because I haven't got belief in you. And that's, there's lots of stuff goes on and is said and things which I don't buy into. And I kind of, it goes into a bit of a territory where I've always try and be careful in kind of what I say. But I just simply don't work like that. I'm not programmed to work like that. My main interest is bringing the best out of you as a person that we can possibly. And that's a journey that both of me and yourself are going to kind of go on. As soon as I say that, what you've described is kind of what I work with, and I feel that I can kind of help you. As soon as I kind of say that, and I'm willing to kind of work with someone, that's because I know that what I do will help that person move forward, and that they'll gain what they can gain out of it. Quite often I'll ask them what their goals are, and straight away they'll, we're always quite reluctant and play down kind of what we feel that we can achieve. There's very few that kind of go, oh yeah, I'm going to be world champion in a year, or I'm going to do this. And so a lot of people, they'll kind of go, well, I just want to win a tournament, or I just want to do this, or I just want to do it. And as soon as I start talking to them and then sort of see what their ability is, I always find myself setting their goals a little bit higher, where I think, okay, you think you can achieve this, but I think we can actually achieve up here instead. But I kind of keep that to myself, and we kind of build on that. Most times, if not all, I kind of find that I'm kind of right, where we kind of think, yeah, I knew that you could qualify for the main tour, or I knew you'd win that fight, or I knew you'd win that tournament. And we kind of I work towards those higher goals that I kind of set than, a lot of time than what they do themselves. I do work. There's a lot of people, a lot of professionals will say, well, I'm only used to having contracts. I want a contract with you. So I will do that, and we can do that. I don't personally feel that there's any need out there for someone to kind of go, look, I'm asking you for help. Then I'm going to give you 10%, 15% of my earnings, and future earnings for a year, 2 years and things. The whole idea from my side is to give people the skills and the tools. So hopefully that the majority of the time they will be able to solve their own problems. They will be able to be in a tournament, and they will be able to come up with then answers to any questions that they're asked for while they're out there, or any challenges, so that then they're, you know, self-reliant, and that they can help themselves. And there's, from the background I come from, again, there's no stronger place than when you feel comfortable and confident enough to be in that position of where you think, I'm faced with a challenge here and a question, I've got the skills to answer that myself. And you know, that then helps you grow that confidence even further. So whole idea is for someone not to be reliant on me, but to know that if they do need me, I'm there also, and that they can contact me. So with that in mind, I didn't want to I work at all levels. So I didn't want to price myself away from people that are just starting out, and those vulnerable people that are just getting into sport that may not have a lot of backing behind them. So I personally, at the moment, I charge £50 an hour for a session with most people. There's a lot of other people that are on professional in sports that kind of say, well, no, I'd rather have a contract with you. And that's what they're adamant that they've wanted. So we've done that. But in that situation, I've always made sure, from my point of view, is that it's as fair as it can be on the competitor themselves, is that they're not overpaying me for services, or, you know, I'm not taking advantage of them in any sort of way, shape and form. And it's a really good relationship, because and if the thing is, well, they're not stuck with those contracts as well. I always kind of say to them, well, you know, things change. So after 6 months or whatever, you know, we'll put a little window in there that we'll have a review. And that if you kind of, you know, want to change something, or you don't feel that something's helpful, we can change that. It's no problem at all. Whereas some people, they'll obviously say, well, okay, you know, we'll have a year contract, or 2 year, 3 years, and things that you're kind of tied down to that way. That a lot, I don't know whether people understand that or not, but that's kind of just where I come from. I'm into fairness, and I'm into looking after the person properly. So, and because everything's confidential with myself, I depend a lot on word of mouth. I am really busy, and I'm kind of like to believe that I'm busy because people have said to other people, you know, how I like kind of look after them, how I'm fair, but the stuff that I do really works as well. And the results are kind of there for them. So I kind of rely on that. Like, it doesn't do me any favors at all for someone to kind of go off and go, don't know what that was about. It was a waste of time, costed me a fortune. I'm out of pocket, haven't won anything, don't feel like I've improved anywhere, and I'll go and tell everyone else about it and stuff. So that obviously doesn't help me out. It's not good for me, and it's not good for the sports and things either. So so yeah, that's basically kind of how to work on that bit. I normally work to start off with a structure of 5 sessions, 5 hourly sessions. I like to do that to start off with, especially with the first 2 at least once a week, because the first 2 kind of really put in a solid foundation for the other stuff to kind of come along to build onto. If there's too much time in between sessions, then people tend to kind of forget, and they stop kind of practicing what we talk about as much. So especially to start off with, it's good to kind of have the first 2 sessions once a week for the first 2 weeks. The longest I like to leave it between then is about 3 weeks, because then that's on the borderline then of getting a little bit too much distance in between. We then have like a review on the 5th one. So a lot of people will kind of say, that's great, 5 sessions have been brilliant. I feel like I can kind of use what we do to then kind of go off on my own and see how things go. And then if I need you, I can give you a call. Some people kind of say, well, okay, there's some other things that have kind of come up. Can we now work on those, or some other areas of life? So can we just continue, which we do on a weekly basis. Some people are kind of just checking with 2-3 times a year, where they'll kind of phone and they'll say, oh, can I book in a session with you just to have a bit of a recap, get myself back on track, you know, make sure that everything's sort of there as a bit of a refresher. So everything's really flexible, and I think it needs to be in sport as well, because life changes day by day. If you're trying to compete, you know, with things outside, you know, relationships, family issues, bills, all that sort of stuff going on, health issues, you know, we have to kind of be flexible with life anyway, I believe. So
Yeah,
I try and keep myself flexible too.
and obviously we're doing this on Zoom, this
Mm.
interview, and I
Yeah.
presume that that's the way that you. I mean, this is something that came out of the pandemic, isn't it? This Zoom. I mean, okay, we
Yeah.
used to
Yeah.
use Skype or Messenger or whatever like that,
Mm.
but now with Zoom, it's so much easier. So, do you conduct a lot of your sessions on Zoom? Is that how people? Yeah, because there might be people listening. I know I've got lots of friends in the pool world in
Mm.
America, in China, all over Asia. So basically, they can work with you via Zoom.
Yeah, and it works really well as well. So obviously the folder that I use, I'm used to obviously there's face-to-face appointments, so I can do that with anyone as well. I have traveled abroad to kind of work with people abroad where like you was talking about expenses where we kind of just have expenses paid for and plus kind of the hourly time or the, whatever we kind of agree with the person. So I am able to do those and do those quite often. But as in the folder that I kind of use, obviously that can be posted out to different countries, or I can email it as well for the person to kind of print that off. And yeah, Zoom, like you said, really during lockdown, it was something that a lot of people kind of got used to sort of using. Um, it was a really busy time actually for myself because a lot of people found themselves stuck at home, couldn't practice their sport in a lot of cases, couldn't go out to venues, couldn't compete in tournaments and competitions. And it was a time where people kind of thought, actually, I want to do something regarding my sport, but what is there, other than hitting a golf ball in the back garden and run the risk of breaking my windows or the neighbours or whatever, which I did see happen as well a few times. What else can I kind of work on? So the mental side and the psychological side did become really popular during that time. A lot of people were kind of making contacts, can I talk to you on Zoom and can we do those sessions? A lot of people as well that were kind of even local to me. They were used to meeting up face to face, and when I first spoke to them, they were adamant, "Oh, it's got to be face to face. I don't do internet, don't do," and that was absolutely fine. And then during lockdown and after lockdown, it was, "Oh, I know we used to meet up face to face, but I'd rather it be on Zoom now if that's okay." So they got used to it, which is good. So even there's a couple of people in golf that live just literally a couple of miles down the road. But we talk on Zoom now more than anything else. And I do kind of we meet up at tournaments if it benefits the person that I'm speaking to. There's an awful lot of stuff that we can kind of do in preparation for a tournament and for matches. A lot of it, as I said, was about the person being self-dependent and looking after themselves and being able to do that and feel comfortable doing that. So a lot of people kind of contact me first of all, and some say, "Well, how comes I've never heard of you? How comes I've never seen you at a tournament? How comes I haven't seen you around venues?" Things like that, and it's really because I only go to them things if it benefits you as a person. If there's a need for me to be there and we talk about it, and you feel that you want me there and stuff, absolutely fine, not a problem at all. But we do an awful lot of work away from that to prepare where the person can then get on with that themselves and they feel comfortable to. And then we'll either talk via Zoom while they're at a tournament, or we'll use phone calls. They might call me between matches and text messages, whatever during that time, whatever people are comfortable with.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just going to ask actually. So
mm,
let's take a pool match for an example. So
mm,
I've lost the first 5 racks, race to 9. I've decided it's time to take a break, go for a washroom break. I'm entitled to
mm.
1 3-minute break or whatever it is per match. So I want to contact you. Um, I guess what I'm asking is if you know that I'm on the stream table at that time, are you watching? Are you looking for signs in my body language? Can you tell things that I'm going through just by looking at my body language? And if I call you in that break, is do you are you often able to help somebody in that situation? Surely you've been in that situation before, right?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of constantly, really. It is constant. The boxing over the last few years, that's been a privilege to work in. I'll let you into a little bit of a secret with boxing. I was always a little bit scared to get involved in boxing, because I used to sit there and I think, it's something that I am interested in. People have asked me and stuff, but I know how I work and what the stuff that we provide and the tools we provide. It gives people, a lot of confidence. It makes them feel really good about themselves. They've got a lot of self-belief. And I was always worried. It's like, well, how would I feel if someone's not prepared to stop because they're full of confidence and they've got that, they're kind of answering that inner voice all the time with these messages and the tools that we kind of use, and they're refusing to stop. Um, how would that make me feel if someone kind of got hurt, or if it went too far or whatever? Where would that lead to? And then it was me being naive, really, because then I kind of, as I was thinking about, thought, hang on a minute, that's a referee's job. A referee, it's well controlled. A referee will stop that. Then there's people around that will stop those things from happening. And then I started working more in boxing where that was apparent and it was obvious. A lot of people as well, they don't believe that boxers have those same thoughts about being worried, being scared, having nerves, having those self-doubts, but of course they do. They do. So yeah, and so with them, we'll talk before they kind of go into the ring. Where you were saying about pool and snooker and other sports, we quite often use keywords. So while working with each other, your keywords might be completely different to someone else's. So to keep things short, I'd perhaps be able to say to you, right, you're on a break. I've noticed this with you. Keep things tight, be big. And there'll be another kind of few keywords where we know through discussion, you'll know straight away what I mean by those things. Be the professional you. Straight away, you'll have a list of things that you've agreed, you need to be the professional version of you. So there's a lot of shortcuts, really, keywords where the person will say, right, okay, I know what he means by that. And then they'll kind of go back in, after their 3 minutes. Sometimes it's a minute even, where we've just had a very short one text message between each other. And yeah, I kind of, as much as I can, if I'm not at a venue, I'll either kind of take feedback from coaches or other staff that someone may be with, the person themselves, or I'll be watching and kind of pick up on body language, how someone's playing, whether they've kind of tightened up a little bit when they're kind of getting nearer to the finish line, those sort of things. You kind of, as a coach would, I kind of guess on that side is, kind of match management, really, where you'll see that someone's, kind of playing a little bit loose and, they're kind of attacking everything and, going for everything, where actually, their opponent is kind of feeding off those moments, and that's where they're gaining the advantage from. So you kind of, give that little bit of feedback as well, is, actually, they're kind of feeding off those moments, try and cut down those unforced errors, or, keeping the moment a little bit more, because you'll see people, even through their body language, that they're starting to look at that reward and what's to be gained if they kind of play well and win. So it's just about sometimes pulling people back just to the basics and sticking to the basics of their game or their sport.
Yeah, it just reminded me, my mind's working all the time, and I'm going to go back to the inner game of tennis, something that Galway said, and it was, he was trying to coach this person, and he had a great way of coaching, where he wouldn't criticize what they were doing. He would just go about it a different way, and it was all about a feeling and just finding out for yourself, basically. But he knew what he was doing on the inside. And there was a thing he said, where he said to a particular player who was always thinking about their technique and the way they were going about playing certain shots. And he said to them, all I want you to do is imagine I'm making a documentary about you, a movie about you. I'm not interested in where the ball goes. I'm not interested if it goes over the net, because the camera is not going to be there. It's only going to be on you. So the end result doesn't matter. I just want you to look like a professional. And he said it was just such a great way of going about it, because then, and I've used it myself, whatever you're doing, however you're feeling, just look the part. Just
Yeah.
look like you're a professional. Walk in on line right, get your stance right, get your bridge right, get your arm nice and straight,
Yeah.
and just that feeling, just look professional. And he said the results were remarkable from that.
Yeah,
Listen, yeah, go on,
it's
sorry,
a
carry on.
it's a it's a book that I think those two books are very much kind of before their time in many ways, and a lot of stuff that I kind of use now. There's a lot of tools that I've developed myself and that I've kind of gone on to that other people have become quite interested in sort of doing something with, and a lot of research in how they kind of work and stuff. But sort of the way that he writes those books and what he writes about in those books, they are kind of the start of those processes that we kind of use. And there's quite an important tool that I kind of use with everybody, that I try to embed with everybody as well, because it's so easy to kind of fall back on when it's needed. And it very much is around that same ethos of looking after yourself as a professional player and how you look. There's so many things that you can kind of gain out of that, of how automatically kind of affect your opponent without even having to think about it. You can let that look after itself, as long as you keep your camp in good order and look after yourself, and how you can kind of build your positivity and your confidence up as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours, and there is one other subject I really, really want
Mm,
to discuss with you, and it's about. I actually went on Facebook this morning. I'm a big social media user. I love it.
mm,
I think it gets people talking, it gets the juices flowing, and we can talk about, lots of different subjects that people are actually going through on a daily basis, and it's kind of
mm.
lets people to start talking about it. And I got a huge response to a little question I put out earlier on. I was
Mm.
playing in a tournament last week, and about 50% of people were using headphones
Right. Okay. Yeah.
while they were playing. They're banned in the big tournaments, obviously,
Mm.
for reasons, probably that you've heard of before as well, where people have been being coached or even
Yeah.
told what shots to play, during, or
Yeah.
they've been listening to the commentary on the
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the stream or whatever. Uh, so it's a subject that deserves a big conversation on its own, I
Mm.
believe. And I've had such a huge response, and I want to get your response to that as well. But we're just going to go for one more quick break,
Okay.
if that's okay with you, Matt.
Yeah, it's
So,
fine. Yeah. No, good.
guys, don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with part 3, and it's about to get juicy. Welcome back. Just before the break, I mentioned that I put a post out on Facebook today about the use of these headphones becoming, I mean, they really have been a bane in my side, these headphones. I think they're antisocial. I think it's kind of off-putting to your opponent who isn't wearing headphones, especially in, the game of pool. Not so important in snooker, I guess, but in pool, where you have to call shots, where
Mm.
you call a push out, for example. I had a situation where I called a push out on a guy, and I'm waving at him, going push, 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 and in the end, he didn't. He was just more interested in. He was on his phone, changing the music, probably in his
Right.
earphones, and I called a push out. He then eventually, I said, your shot. He came to the table, picked up the white ball, and said, "You fouled." I said, "No, I played a push out." He said,
Mm.
"Well, I didn't hear it." I went, "Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly."
Yeah.
So a lot of tournaments, big tournaments, not so much the local ones that like I play in. That I
Mm.
was at a tournament. There was a women's tournament actually at the weekend, and I reckon a very, very high percentage of them had
Mm.
earphones. They seem to think it gives them some kind of advantage. I've never tried it. And I really wanted, before I had this discussion with you, I wanted to go to my pool hall, which is literally about 2 minutes away. And I charged my pods up, and I was going to go and just put my favorite music on and see if it made any difference, because I know it lifts my mood. You know, certain music will put me in a really good mood. And I actually spent about an hour on YouTube this morning just going through some great music that I'd, you know, old playlists that I'd made that made me feel good when maybe I don't feel very good inside. So I want to try, and I want to experiment with it to see it might absolutely make me play much worse, or I don't know, it might make me play a little bit better, but I would never want to get used to wearing them. So my question to you, Matt, is where do you stand on the use of headphones while playing any sport, really?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I've gathered obviously from what you've said as well that you've had a really good response from that as well, with mixed views and stuff. So, from my side and from the psychological side, music is a great influence for a lot of people. It's something that a lot of people kind of use when they're feeling, you know, kind of low and down, whether it's to do with a relationship breakup. You know, we've all sat there listening to those sad songs at times and stuff. You know, and it kind of either gives us, it'll either complement how we're feeling, or it might give us, you know, a kind of, you know, motivation. You know, we can kind of listen to something that's motivating and kind of give us a lift. Or if we're kind of feeling a little bit excited, you know, I use it with a lot of people that suffer from anxiety and things like that, that they can kind of listen to something, you know, that's a little bit more mellower to kind of calm them down and help kind of distract them and take their mind from, you know, kind of the way that they're feeling. So music's a great tool. Humor I like as well. Humor's another great tool that I kind of like to use as well. But yeah, sticking with music. So I use it a lot with people. I'll kind of suggest it to people as, you know, do you listen to any music? What do you like listening to? When do you find yourself listening to it? And as we spoke about that kind of pathway that we spoke about earlier, that might be included in there as someone's preparation. They might like to practice listening to certain types of music. They might listen to certain bits when they're traveling to venues in the car, you know, while they're at a venue, to kind of distract themselves from other people coming along and making comments to them, all sorts of things. So it's a great tool, but on the other side of it, especially around practice, people like to practice listening to music with headphones in and listen to that side of things. Is I always struggle when you kind of add in elements of something that you can't then take into a tournament sort of environment. So because that's all of a sudden that's a big shock. If you've kind of got even a cueing aid, you know, if you're used to using a cueing aid in practice or another device in practice that isn't legal to kind of use in a tournament, all of a sudden when that's there and it's not gone and it's been taken away from you, how do you then feel? You know, then are you capable of coping with the outside distractions, the background noise, the other music that the venue might be playing, or anything like that? So it's always important to be kind of wary of when that's taken away from you, how that kind of affects you. A lot of people may kind of say, okay, but it doesn't bother me because I'm only playing in these local tournaments, these smaller tournaments in venues where it's allowed. You know, but what is your end kind of goal? Are you aiming to play in those bigger tournaments where you then have that taken away from you? You've then got to get used to not having that sort of available to you. I always see it as well as in the same around anxiety, really. If you feel anxious and in a moment or in a situation, is it best to kind of take a form of medication that will take that anxiety away? Or is it better to kind of understand why you feel anxious at that moment and find other natural alternatives to dealing with that better? You know, whether that's a way that you kind of think, tool that you kind of use at that moment. So when it comes to music as well, I often kind of ask, well, I would ask is, why are you kind of using it? And wouldn't you prefer to be more self-reliant, to have those kind of answers yourself, to be able to give yourself what music is giving you, so you're not reliant on having headphones? And because I've spoken to people before that have turned up at a tournament and they're on the phone saying, "Oh, my headphones are broke." You know, they've been in my pocket and I can't listen to my phone because everyone will know what I'm listening to. They don't want to listen to what I've got on my phone, but my headphones aren't working. So then they're in a little bit of a state of panic because that's been taken away from them for no fault of their own. So, and that's what I kind of try to build is really of, do you really want to be reliant on something else? Doesn't matter really what it is, or do you want to be self-reliant where you've got the tools and the ability to kind of get yourself through and deal with those situations in a better way without using, you know, something else to there. So that'd be my main thoughts on it. I would tend to kind of encourage people to use it, perhaps on the preparation to traveling to a venue, sat in a hotel, you know, something to kind of do and listen to there to either pick yourself up or calm yourself down. Sat in like the players' lounge at venues, you know, it's a good thing then, you know, it kind of prevents people coming up to you and starting conversations that you might not want to have with people before you're due to play. It might then kind of give you a motivational boost. It might kind of calm you down as well. There's a really good technique of where people can actually record themselves, telling themselves like affirmations. So you can kind of record on your phone an affirmation of you talking about what you want to achieve, how far you've come, you know, what you're kind of working on and how that's kind of working for you. So they're good things to listen to as well.
Is that something that you might work on with a player as well, like working on helping them prepare a kind of affirmation recording? Is that something that you would work on with them as well if they wanted you to?
Yeah, it's something that comes up a lot, and people have got very different ideas. So I'd encourage anybody to give something a go. So, and it's finding the right tools that, you know, you feel comfortable with. So there's a lot of people who kind of go, "Oh, I've never heard of that. What's that?" And you kind of explain it. And so, look, I can ask you a few questions. I can kind of write a small affirmation for you that you can keep on your phone, either in text form or kind of record it to yourself. There's nothing quite like hearing although we don't like kind of hearing our own voices recorded. Sometimes I'm looking forward to watching this back because I hate the sound of my own voice when I do anything like that. But our brains kind of tune into our voice telling us good things about ourselves, which we don't tend to do very often either. Our self-talk generally can be quite bad, where we'll call ourselves all sorts of names and stuff like that. So if we've got a recording of our voice telling us good things, positive things, and our goals, how we're going to get there, what we're working on, yeah, that's something I try to encourage people to give a go if they're not aware of them and used them before in a way. And 9 times out of 10, most people kind of go, "Do you know what? Actually, that really works. I like using that." I'd always recommend that people use them every day. Some people kind of go, "Well, actually, I don't use it every day, but I use it every time I go to practice, or I use it before I go to play, or if I'm sat in my hotel room thinking about my opponent or who I'm due to play, I'll kind of read that or listen to it and remind myself, and then that kind of makes a difference to me in that time as well." So like snooker, pool, there's lots of hanging around and waiting for matches to start, and, you know, lots of time to kill. So it's a lot of it is about managing that extra time, that free time, and doing more helpful, positive things during that time, rather than sitting there just being with our own thoughts that's, you know, quite often might not be that positive. So so definitely affirmations are good.
Yeah, you touched on when people are practicing about, you know, it's maybe not a good thing to do practicing with music, because it's something you can't then go on and do in the tournament itself. And I remember back in the 80s, Steve Davis saying something about just coming up to a tournament, his practice routine would be he would play somebody in the same race that they were going to be playing at the same time that they were going to be playing. He'd prepare himself. He'd eat at the certain time as if he was playing a tournament. He would then go to a venue not necessarily at home, but go to a venue to play. So he's actually going there, and he would even wear the same clothes that he would have to wear in the tournament, because, you know, it's no good practicing in shorts and t-shirt and then all of a sudden it comes to a tournament and you've got to wear a collar and a bow tie and
definitely,
and shiny shoes. So he used to use any little advantage he could, and I thought that was a really, really smart way. He used to say, practice like it's a match, so when it's in a match, it's just like practice, which I
I was going to say, really, so many people sort of, you know, they come across and they say, you know, I just want to play the way I do in practice. I want to play in matches, and it's that way round that they look at it. Whereas me, it's not. It's flipping it the other way round. You kind of want, you know, your practices to look like your matches. If you're playing, you know, in practice as it were in a match, and you know, following the same kind of you know, structure, you're going to recognize what you're doing in a match. It's, you know, you're so used to it, and that's what your norm is. If you're playing in practice, as you've said, you know, and I know a lot of people still won't do this, or they kind of, you know, you say it, you know, if you're practicing in shorts, you know, in your trainers, in a t-shirt, listening to music, you're perhaps using, you know, a cueing aid, or you're using different devices kind of in that, you know, your kind of formats, you know, where you're doing a lot of solo practice and you're not really competing against somebody else at a different level, or, you know, and your practice isn't challenging. If there isn't some sort of added pressure to your practice, that when you kind of walk into that kind of cauldron that you can kind of think that it is when you walk into a venue, all of those things are going to make you or help you kind of feel uncomfortable when you walk into that building into, you know, a proper format. So the more things you can add to your practice to make it look more like your matches, you know, the better. And especially when it comes to, you know, different forms of little bits of pressure as well, kind of adding a reward and consequence perhaps for practice routines, things like that. So it's not just a case of, well, I didn't achieve what I did today, or what I wanted to today. I'll beat myself up about it a little bit. You know, I'll kind of hope it's a bit different when I go into practice tomorrow. It's about putting a structure to everything that you kind of do, really, that has got a value and that benefits you in some way, rather than, you know, when you talk about top professionals, what are they doing? You know, what template are they using? Who are they kind of copying, you know, to kind of get to where they are? We spoke about Michael Jordan sort of earlier on. There's some fantastic quotes that he's come out with during his career, loads and loads of them if you Google them. You know, one's about, you know, everyone concentrates on, you know, the baskets I've made, but not the thousands and thousands that I didn't, and the mistakes that I've made and things like that. People again, you know, talk about Ronnie and how easy he kind of makes the game and stuff. You know, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, but years ago, I saw him practicing until his fingertips were bleeding. You know, he practicing that hard that he kind of messed the cloth up on a table and things. You know, those people work hard. You know, and you can't believe that they don't. You know, because they do. They put in the hours. They put in the time. There may be, you know, that big element of natural ability and that sort of thing, but if you don't look after it and take responsibility for it and care for it, that ability isn't going to see you through. You know, you're gonna need more than that, and hard work. You know, you can't beat hard work. You have to put that effort in.
Yeah, I mentioned Formula One earlier on, and Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton, all the top drivers. And, you know, Schumacher was a bit like Jordan, first one in the gym, first one on the basketball court practicing his free throws. I can't even say it. Anyway, but you know what I mean. And Schumacher and Hamilton, you know, he's first out on the track like 7 a.m. in the morning, and they have to drag him off like when it's starting to get dark.
Yeah,
because he's just all this testing and in that endless pursuit of perfection. And the you know, it's easy. It's much easier to do when you're when you're on TV and there's thousands and thousands of people all cheering you on and giving you that extra boost. But it's those times where there's no one watching, you know, like a swim. I've watched documentaries on swimmers where they have to get up at, you know, they're holding down normal jobs. So they have to get up at like 3:30 in the morning to go to the swimming baths for 4 a.m. in the morning, because they have to be there before it's open, and you know the baths open at say 7 o'clock or something. So and they go and do that, and they're doing all that before going to work, and then afterwards they're back doing it again, going to the gym, watching what they eat. And it's so hard to be a top professional, but it's always the ones that make it look easier, that make it look easiest, that are actually working the hardest. I mean, I was blown away with what Jordan does, with what Schumacher did, in the endless pursuit of wanting to be the best. And they really do work harder
definitely
than anyone else. And I remember another thing that Steve Davis said along the same lines of practice, and you said about giving yourself a reward at the end of it, you know, to create that extra pressure. And I remember him saying that there was times where he wouldn't eat for ages because he promised himself that until he made the long straight blue off the spot 50 times in a row, he wouldn't let himself have a sandwich. And it's that's insane, isn't it? But six-time world champion, the guy, in my opinion, that changed Q Sports forever. And to think that, but that's kind of a bad example to use, I guess, because Steve Davis was never known for his natural talent. But that also shows you that if you're that determined, Matt, you can still get to the highest level in sports if you do have that work ethic. So imagine
definitely
you've got the talent as well.
No, definitely. And that's, to be honest, that's something that I get the most enjoyment out of, and you know, kind of a kind of most proud of, really, is working with those people at kind of any age, but especially when you start working with them at amateur level, where you hear kind of their peers saying, oh, you know, they're never going to amount to anything, you know, they're not going to achieve anything, they're not going to do this, they're not going to do that. And then I'll kind of get a phone call from someone, and they'll say, oh, look, you know, can I kind of work with you? I'd be interested in spending some time with you. Have a little chat with them. And I normally look for a little spark. And I've done this all the way through my working career, really, of a little spark of where, no matter how small, of that person, they say something and you think, do you know what? You've kind of said something there that I know we can work on and we can build on that. And it sounds a little bit Disneyland, but it's a bit like that spark will turn it into a fire. You know, there's something there that we can kind of work on. And
can you give us an example of something that you might hear from a player and they might think, oh yeah, I can definitely work with you on that? Is there?
Do you know it's more personal things, really. It's like someone might be really negative and they might be really low in a really negative place, haven't sort of stuck out as achieved very much. I've heard like their peers sort of saying, you know, oh, they're never going to do that. You know, why don't they go and get a proper job and that sort of stuff? And it might even be something really personal, and that really connects with me, especially where someone's you know, phoned up in a very low mood, on the verge of giving up their sport, and have kind of said, all I wanted, you know, right at the end of being negative, and oh, I'm never going to amount to anything, you know, these people are right, and everything else. And right at the end, they'll say, you know, I just wanted to kind of make my dad proud, or just wanted to make my granddad proud of me. You know, that's something that really kind of connects with myself, of where I think, well, okay, well, you know, you've said, what does that mean for you? How hard are you willing to kind of work with that? What have you kind of done already, and what changes you're willing to make? Or they might kind of, you know, they might go same process of being really negative, really down on themselves, self-talk's awful. And then they kind of might say, you know, all I wanted to do was enjoy a moment out there in that arena. And they might add that towards the end of a conversation. where I kind of think, well, okay, let's make that happen. Let's work at that and let's make that happen. And then you go back then to the beginning of their conversation of, let's start tidying some of this stuff up. Let's get you talking to yourself better. Let us start looking at those smaller goals rather than those bigger ones that you set all those years ago. And there's nothing greater, I feel, than especially helping someone that is in that position get to a point where they are on telly, where they're achieving bigger things, where they're then having their peers saying, do you know what? I was wrong about this person. Look at what they're doing now. They've actually become a really good player. And that's how powerful that kind of mindset is, and the psychological side, because they perhaps had the ability all along, but they didn't have the self-belief, or the confidence has been knocked, or they didn't get over those setbacks. A lot of people in both of our sports and a lot of other sports talk about scars. Oh, I've got too many scars now. I've got beaten in this tournament and that left a bad scar. I've got that memory of when this happened. But even when people have got that mindset, you can talk to them and go, do you know what? They're not scars, they're lessons. So let's start looking at them as lessons. What did you learn from that experience instead? You might have feel that experience really damaged you, but there's a lesson there. What lesson can we go back and learn from what you gained from there? What can we do different next time when you're in that position? What tools can we put in position now for you to kind of get over that sort of moment and cross that line? And they might even still be quite reluctant then, as in, well, no, it doesn't work like that. It's damage and things. A lot of the younger players I've noticed, it's starting to creep back in for some reason, but a lot of the younger players and competitors in sport, they haven't used that kind of scar, I've been scarred language very much recently, but I have noticed it started creeping back in a few conversations with some people when they first get in touch. And I don't really know kind of why, because that kind of went out of trend a little bit for a few years. But I have noticed that. But they're not scars, they're lessons. If we talk about physical scars, I've got scars. I've got scars on my hands and stuff. That scar there kind of told me not to mess about at the top of a ladder with a grinder. That was, that's a lesson to learn. A scar on my knee is not to kind of ride a bike, a motorbike illegally on the road without insurance, the license. That's what I learned from that one. So there's lessons there that we can kind of take forward to, to kind of help, in the future.
Yeah, they say, don't they, that we learn more from our losses than we ever will from our victories, because if you're winning and winning, definitely, you don't kind of look at yourself and think, well, you don't analyze anything, you just carry on doing what you did, but it might have been just a little bit of luck or a scratch by your opponent at the right time, that gave you that win, and so you just go away and you think, well, I won, it's okay. But I think it's very, very important that that quote of, you learn more from your losses than you ever will from your victories.
Yeah, so definitely.
What I wanted to ask you, as we come to the end of this, Matt, is, I could talk about this all day. I really could.
I know, it's been so easy talking to you.
Sorry, guys, if you're getting bored, but don't. We've got some nice nuggets to come at the end of this. I'm sure you're not getting bored. So yeah, look, just a message to anyone that's listening to this now, and maybe they've got a league match tonight, or they've got a tournament coming up at the weekend, and they've just fed up with runner up, or just missing out on the money in the money stage of the tournament. Talking about myself here, of course. What kind of little piece of advice would you give to those players that are just struggling to get over that last little hurdle that so many of us never do?
Yeah, I'd say really try as much as you can to strip sort of any kind of the value out of things, of why you're competing, like those bigger values, as in trophies, recognition, prize money, that sort of stuff. So remember why you first started playing in the first place, which for most of us was out of enjoyment. We enjoyed playing, to kind of get that enjoyment and put that back. And to go back to sticking to the basics, really, I always see it as like a milking stool, the three-legged kind of stool. If you've got three things kind of in place, three legs, which is enjoy it, remain positive throughout, and hang on a minute. Yeah, and stay in the moment, right? So enjoy it, stay positive throughout, and stay in the moment. So if you've got those three things in place, those three elements look after so much more. You've got loads of stuff above that kind of I feel nervous, or kind of what's my opponent going to do? What's going to kind of happen? How am I going to get through setbacks? Am I going to make myself look silly? If you've got one of those elements missing, then your stool's going to fall over. It's not stable. So those three kind of elements really put stability sort of in there, and a good basic thing to kind of then build upon. So that's one way of kind of looking at that. But that reminding yourself of why you first started, which is normally the enjoyment. I enjoy playing. I enjoy the competition.
Yeah.
Staying in the moment. So instead of looking at the distractions of like, oh, if I win this match, I'm through to play so and so. If I win this match, I win the tournament. I then get the trophy, prize money, recognition, and stuff. So you take those distractions out of it by staying in the moment, concentrating on the shot that's in front of you, and that's all that kind of matters then, which then includes your process and your pre-shot routine and the process that you have of potting that ball, without filling people with too much. They're kind of the main things I'd look at kind of concentrating on going into that environment of just going in and remembering what you first started playing for, and try and achieve that in kind of every match that you're playing, especially the next one that's in front of you. I'm putting those three things in place. So we get distracted by so much. We get distracted by our opponent and worrying about them, when really we should be focused on ourselves and what we're strong at. So you kind of think, right, forget about thinking about them. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm playing the balls on the table. What are my strengths? What am I good at? Why do I worry them? And bringing that back to yourself.
Yeah, it's not like tennis or a lot of sports, even Formula One, where you're at the table on your own, and you've got no one trying to hit the ball back against you, and you've got no one trying to overtake you in that kind of thing. I love that analogy you used, by the way, with the milking stool, and I'm gonna remember that. I wonder why milking stools actually only have three legs. I wonder what happened to the other one.
There must be.
Oh,
I'll have to Google it now. No, I'll have to Google it. There will be an answer. There will be a reason, won't there? Will be a reason for that. I don't know whether it's perhaps the other leg got in the way or something. I don't know. But
I can't believe you didn't pick up on my little joke there. I said, what happened to the other one?
Oh, the other one. Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, that did go over my head. I had my serious head on rather than my funny head. So
I know. I rarely have my serious head on. Look, Matt,
yeah, no, too. So,
it's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure we're going to do this again sometime.
Oh, thanks a lot, Mark.
And if any guys you've got any questions for Matt, or if you want to get in contact with Matt Andrews is his name on Facebook. I mean, how do you prefer people to contact you if they've heard this and they've liked what they've heard, and they'd like to get in contact with you and just have an initial discussion with you? How do they do that?
Yeah, and I always do as well. I missed it out at the first thing. I do give loads of time away. More than happy to do that. So even if anyone's got any little questions and things, I always do like an initial free conversation, which is just a basic chat, really. That's to make sure that what someone feels that they could do with help on is what I kind of cover. I'm really open and honest. So if it's not, I'll just say, I'll say, sorry, but that's not something that I actually do. I always try and refer them on to someone that I trust to kind of help them out with whatever that is, if I can. But yeah, I think I'm very easy to find on social media. If you just Google Matt Andrews Mentoring, I'm sure it comes up with my website, Facebook. I've even delved into the depths of TikTok at the minute, which is interesting in its own right. But yeah, Twitter, any of those, I'm kind of really easy to find. MattAndrewsMentoring.org is kind of my website. It's got all kind of my information on there. Got my qualifications on there, the areas that I work in. It's got a small blog at the bottom as well to kind of give other advice on like sleep, dealing with anxiety, motivation. And it's got a bit on there as well of kind of tips to kind of find the right person to work with as well. So there's some little safety advice and tips on there as well that might be useful to someone. But yeah, all my contact details are there.
I heard also on the grapevine that there might be a book coming out very, very soon. Look forward to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a secret at the minute, so I'm not sure if I'm really supposed to say much, but here we go. Yeah, hopefully sometime next year. There's especially someone that I'd kind of perhaps introduce yourself to, Mark, as well, who's taken an interest in what I do. They kind of recognise, they do a lot of research into kind of cue sports and stuff, especially. And they've kind of recognised very much in the way that I kind of work, how good it is really, which is nice for me. A nice bit of confirmation. So we're kind of looking at putting something together for next year. Hopefully, it looks like that'd be quite an exciting thing for people to pick up and read as well. So
sounds amazing, and
yeah,
it's great hearing what's in your mind, and I hope to talk to you a lot more about that on Zoom and off Zoom. Hopefully we're going to meet up somewhere. I'm sure we will somewhere around the
definitely.
world.
No, it'd be really nice. That'd be good.
So thank you very much for your time, Matt Andrews. Find him on Facebook. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. I know I have. I'm going to get these headphones out now because I don't
annoying,
like
aren't
headphones.
they? No,
annoying. Thanks ever such, Matt.
Yeah. No worries. No, thank you so much for asking me and giving me the time and stuff. I've really enjoyed it. Really good, enjoying the conversation. I could do this all day with yourself. So no, just thanks for your time.
I've got to go and get some practice in, and I actually am going to go and try with headphones just to see.
No, it'd be good.
I hope no one sees me though. I'm going to find a little quiet corner somewhere.
You'll have to give me some feedback as well on how you found it.
Yeah, I really am interested because I want to know, even listening to certain types of music, whether it makes me. Actually, before we go, somebody did mention that because your hearing is one of your senses, and they were saying that a lot of people said this actually, if you take away one of the senses, would it affect your game in a negative way? Like I love that sound, that the thing that the click of balls is the thing that first got me interested, and it's the first thing I listen for whatever country I go to in the world. I listen for that click of balls, and my favourite sound in all the world is that the cue onto the cue ball, the cue ball onto the object ball, and the object ball smashing into the back of the pocket.
Yeah, the back of the pocket. It's not it's a nice sound, isn't it? When I even enjoy that one, hearing that. But no, that's a really good comment actually, and I think there is some pros and cons for them. I think individually people have to kind of find out a little bit about that themselves. We haven't spoke about visualization, which when you encourage someone to kind of visualize playing, visualizing those moments, you talk about those senses during that time is, the smell of the cloth, the smell of the chalk, the sound of the balls hitting each other, kind of the feel of the cloth, what you kind of see and visualizing and feeling those shots that you play, which is a really important part of a lot of people's kind of work on the psychological side of things. So it's a great comment about, taking those senses away and the effect that they can kind of have as well. So,
well, that's something that we can talk about in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
We really have got to go. Matt Andrews, thank you so much. No worries. See you guys. Okay.
All right, boot me out. Thanks a lot. Play well as well. See you later. Play well.
Goodbye.